Good evening. My name is Steve Hernandez, and I am the Executive Director of the Legislature's Commission on Women, Children, Seniors, Equity, and Opportunity, a nonpartisan commission of the Connecticut State Legislature. We are here to conduct part 2 of our December trafficking series called Connecticut's Corridors of Corruption, Trafficking and Exploitation of Our Most Vulnerable. For those of you who joined us for part 1 of the series, brief recap, we were able to hear from a survivor some of the harrowing and difficult details of her experience toward liberation from being a victim of trafficking. Today, we are going to hear about what we are calling agents of grace, people in community, in law enforcement, and in the support community who have come together to offer ways to liberate people who are the victims of trafficking in the state of Connecticut, in the region, and across the country. So without further ado, I would like to introduce the chair of our Trafficking in Persons Council for the state of Connecticut for her opportunity to give a couple of words before we move to our first speaker. Welcome, Representative Jillian Gilchrist.
Thank you so much, Steve. And it is my pleasure to be here tonight. Hard topic, but such a needed topic to discuss. And I am just so pleased that we are having these meetings. I feel very fortunate to be in this role, to get to learn from the folks here tonight and others at the Trafficking in Persons Council. And so, yes, thank you for the opportunity to listen and learn with you all this evening.
Thank you so much. Representative Gilchrist, if I could just impose on you just a little bit more. Our first guest, as you know, is Anne-Marie Boulay, who is the Chief Executive Officer of the Underground. Yesterday, as we discussed some of the resources that we're able to, that came to bear in the work that both the Bureau and advocates were doing on behalf of our presenter, Anne-Marie Boulay was highlighted as one of those agents of grace that was really critical in her liberation. So if you could introduce her, that would be great, because I know you've worked with her over the years.
It would be my pleasure and my honor. So I have had the pleasure of working with Anne-Marie probably for about 5-6 years now. And from the moment I met Anne-Marie, I've just been in awe of her work and of the partnership she pulls together to ensure that women and men who have experienced the atrocities of human trafficking get the support and services that they so desperately need. And I thank Anne-Marie for being someone who can elevate above differences to find where we share commonalities, and who is always driven by the mission of this work. And so it is my honor to work with Anne-Marie and to introduce her this evening.
Thank you so much, Jillian. I'm just as honored to work with you, as you know, and I find Jillian Gilchrist to be, I remember when she was sitting in the Trafficking in Persons Council chairperson seat, and the work that she did in a few short years was probably more work than we had seen Connecticut do in probably 10 years. She's quite the, she is definitely an agent of grace too. So as we all are, right? I mean, you obviously have to have a very special heart to do this work. And I know that all of my colleagues tonight are in that caliber, and we all appreciate each other. I think I'm just supposed to share a few minutes about what the Underground's about. And so I'll try to do that really quickly, because there's lots of others that want to share too. So we're the faith-based initiative in the state of Connecticut, and our work is to bring awareness about human trafficking in Connecticut. Many times we see our churches go and have great missions all around the world. And my work, what I keep imploring the churches to do, is have a mission right in our backyard. I think for many of the churches, when we first stepped out with awareness, they just had no idea that this was happening. In fact, no matter what community we go to, no matter what university we attend, to bring awareness. It seems to be the thread that this is always, something that people didn't know was happening in Connecticut. They knew it was happening around the world, other parts of the universe, but not here in our state. And so that's always how we start the conversation. We explain what we see. We've received a lot of training from the Department of Children and Families. We're certified in the curriculum, many of the curriculums that department put out. And so when we bring awareness, we bring that expertise, and also we bring the experts in the field to these events. And here's what happens. The audience reacts, right? That we hope that prevention occurs immediately. We work with adults, obviously parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, any kind of caretaker for a youth or a child. And then we also will work directly with youth and children for prevention. And that's why we tell the story, to bring awareness. It's only about causing prevention. I mean, Shay was profoundly, the things that she had to say were very hard to listen to, but that's reality of what we know the victims that experience human trafficking are going through. They have been deeply hard lives, deep exploitation, and they've really been harmed in so many complex ways. It's a long road back to healing and a new life. And so the best thing is to prevent this from happening to begin with. So awareness is essential. But unfortunately, it does happen. And so the Underground implores the churches to get involved. So we will bridge people who are interested in this work to volunteer opportunities with the agencies, as well as with our own the work that we do with outreach. They have done anything from creating back-to-school backpacks for the minors of the state that go directly to the Department of Children, to bringing Christmas gifts out this week, again, to the children of the Department of Children who have been confirmed victims of trafficking. We have also had these same people go out and bring signage to various businesses where the hotline will be posted. Thanks to Jillian and her hard work. Years ago, we were able to get that mandated for the state of Connecticut. And so there's been literally hundreds and hundreds of businesses that have been visited by the Underground to bring these signs out and to post those so that if there's people in trouble, they can get help. Some of the other ways that we're working is with direct supports to traffic victims, especially young adults. And so we look a little different than Bloom in Syria, although their work is outstanding. Same with Love 146. Our work, we're looking to be mentors to these people, which is what that's the kind of relationship that we have with Shay. So we're doing life on life with them. We want to help them integrate into community. We try to help them with supports, direct supports like housing, clothing, food, just normal utilities, whatever they might need. And we do this for a period of time while we work with them through the mentor program to help them establish independently. And I'd like to just share a quick story. The Underground has also been instrumental in bridging different providers into the state of Connecticut to help in the anti-trafficking movement. And one of the providers that are here now is called Amira, and they are bringing a transitional house soon to the greater Hartford area. They stand to open in January. And last year, Amira told me that they had 90 applicants to their program in 2019, of which 15 people actually applied, right? They went through the process, they went through the screening, of which 3 people were admitted into the house. So the balance is 87 people. And I care so much about, and that's our ministry, we care so much about the ones that won't go into a transitional housing program, or maybe they just don't fit into that realm. We want to work with those that want to live independently but don't know how to do it, right? And just need some help, need some services. And we're piloting this program right now. And we're underwriting it, and we're hoping very soon we've been working it for the past 2 years, but we're hoping to be more aggressive with this program come 2021. So I mean, essentially, that's what we do. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I can help you understand. Oh, some of the fun things that we do for victims of trafficking, because it's been so horrific for them, we believe in providing them with new opportunities. And so we provide scholarships for sometimes retraining, but also things like horseback riding lessons, art lessons, exercise if they want it, you know, if they wanted to become maybe an actor. If they've got a dream that they want to pursue and we think we can help with that, we will fund those kind of things. And really all of the donations that we receive right now go directly to the field. And so those are some of the ways that we're helping, and we're glad to be here. One other philosophy that the Underground has is that we try to understand what Connecticut has for resources, and then we fill in the gaps. And so we don't want to duplicate services. We only want to complement the services that we have in the state, and we have many, like I said, Bloom and Siri, Love 146, and then the Department of Children and Families does such great work, and so many others. So when we see a gap, we try to fill it, which is why we bridged Amira here to the state of Connecticut. Is why we're bringing mentoring services to young adults and that sort of thing. So hopefully that helps you understand some of our work. Our partners, we consider all law enforcement our partners, certainly all the churches in the state of Connecticut, the trafficking in persons, and then all of the agencies in the state. So thank you for letting me share.
Thank you so much, Anne-Marie. And we will be coming back to you toward the end of the individual introductions of the agencies and advocates who are working in the field on the issue of human trafficking. But thank you for your introduction and for letting us know a little bit more about what you do. Before we go much further, I want to thank again our co-host today, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, particularly Special Agent in Charge Dave Sundberg, who is joining us and will be part of the conversation later on in today's episode. We are also joined by Special Agent Wendy Bowersox, who was also featured in yesterday's conversation. And finally by FBI Public Affairs Specialist Charles Grady is with us as well. We'll all be joining the conversation together later, but for the benefit of our viewers, I wanted to welcome you to the conversation. Next, we would be honored to hear from Crystal Ambrosaides, Anti-Human Trafficking Coordinator with the Salvation Army. Welcome, Crystal.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for having me. I'm Crystal. I'm the Anti-Human Trafficking Coordinator for the Salvation Army, and I cover our entire division, which is Connecticut and Rhode Island. And so I oversee all of our anti-trafficking initiatives, probably the most important of which is our Bloom initiative. And so through Bloom, we do long-term comprehensive case management for survivors ages 16 and up. We work with male, female, and non-binary survivors. And when I say long-term case management, we work with survivors for at least a year. A lot of them have been with us for 1.5 years, 2 years, again, based on, of course, all of the trauma that they've gone through, and really with the ultimate goal of helping them become more self-sufficient. So we have 3 phases of case management that we assist with, helping stabilize their housing and their income, connecting them to spiritual and therapeutic recovery, so traditional talk therapy, but also yoga therapy, art therapy, whatever type of mental health services that will really help them work through that trauma. And then the last phase is really helping them reintegrate back into the community. So as we work with survivors, one of the things that we find is that they're just not always aware of the services that are already available to them in the communities. And so we offer Bloom in Greater Hartford. We offer it in Willimantic, where we serve all of Windham County. And then we are in the process right now of opening our 3rd program in New London that serves all of New London County. And for us to be in New London, it's quite exciting because not only was it our first federal award that we received for New London, but it's also a chance for us to kind of work with the casinos down in that area, recognizing that we all kind of talk about the casinos and trafficking and how those may kind of overlap, if you will. So that's definitely something that we're looking forward to diving into. In addition to our case management in Hartford, we operate a drop-in center for women who are in commercial sexual exploitation. So it's at our Hartford location, and the women come in on Fridays from 11 in the morning to 2 in the afternoon. We don't do any paperwork, no intakes. They can just literally walk in, give whatever name they want to. They'll get a hot meal. They have hygiene items. We have pastoral care if they're spiritual. And then we do some type of arts and crafts with them, or manicures, what have you. Again, just to give them a break from all the horrific things that they're being forced to do out on the streets. And as a prelude to the drop-in center, we do weekly street outreach on Thursday evenings. We train volunteers on trafficking, and they go out with a staff member, and we're out on the streets in Hartford. We prepare hygiene bags, and we talk to the women, and it's a really quick interaction, 1 or 2 minutes. We're just out here giving gift bags. Are you interested? And then we invite them to the drop-in center. And while we would love to spend time with them, we make it quick so that no one's in danger. We have never been in danger, but we do see that there are traffickers in the area that are really watching us and also watching the women that are working. And so we're quick about those interactions. To date, I think we've had about 98 encounters out on the streets, and then we've had 5 women that come to the drop-in center. So unfortunately with COVID, our street outreach and our drop-in center have been closed since March. So that's definitely something that we know that the women are out there, and we have many volunteers that are eager to get back out there. So as soon as we can kind of develop a creative way to get out there, and/or as soon as this whole COVID mess goes away, we're really looking forward to getting back out there. Aside from that, we do, as everyone else here does, a lot of education and awareness around trafficking, victim identification, how to create trauma-informed spaces, really just kind of ensuring that all of our communities across Connecticut know what to look for, because in order for us to have programs and provide services, we've got to make folks aware of what the issue and what it looks like. And then last but not least, I would say, not every day is a bad day. So I always like to kind of talk about our successes and what we see. Despite COVID and all that's gone on this year, we do have 2 survivors that are moms for the first time. So that always brings some warmth to all that they've gone through. We have a couple that have enrolled in college for the first time. And we also have a few that have gotten their first apartments. And so as I say, the horrific things that go on, we're there every step of the way as much as they allow us to be. And aside from that, we like to celebrate those successes as well. So I know that's a lot of what we do in a tiny nutshell, but I really appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight and talk a little bit more about the Salvation Army and about Bloom. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Crystal. And I will have some questions later on, because as I'm hearing the different resources and as they develop throughout the conversation, I'm starting to see how it is that your network relates to each other in that trajectory toward independence. So I really appreciate the work that you do. And I'm going to go next to one of our members of our panel today, Leonera Cruz Awadl, who is the director of the Connecticut Institute for Refugees and Immigrants, a statewide nonprofit organization here in the state of Connecticut. Welcome to you, Leonela.
Thanks so much. Thank you for having me. So again, my name is Leonela, and I am the director of Project Rescue. I work for the Connecticut Institute for Refugees and Immigrants. Most of you may know us by ICON, the International Institute of Connecticut. We've been around for about over 100 years. And there's a number of programs which I'll briefly mention, because it's not just the anti-human trafficking work that we do, but a number of other programs within the agency. So one of the biggest programs that we have within the agency is the Immigration Legal Services, and we operate out of our Bridgeport, Stamford, and Hartford office. We also have a satellite office out of Waterbury. And what we primarily do is like that focus with like the family immigration, family-based immigration, victim services, know your rights type of situations. We help a lot of people in the community when it comes to immigration. Now with COVID, obviously not as many in-person interactions, but we still are seeing people, whether it be by the computer or specific appointments that are made. A lot of focus recently has been on the Know Your Rights presentations and any changes that may be in the immigration system. We also have a survivor services program, and that program is specifically for victims of torture. And that program operates statewide. And we also have the refugee program, primarily out of the Bridgeport office, but we have gotten refugees that resettle in different parts of the state. And then we have Project Rescue, and we've been around for over 10 years. Within Project Rescue, so it's again, not just the anti-human trafficking program, we actually have our unaccompanied minors program, and that program has operated for over 5 years. That connection actually began through our anti-human trafficking program. We were connected with Heartland out of Chicago, and they asked if we could help out with this population. Initially, we thought, would this be a good placement for this program to place it under Project Rescue? We quickly realized that this population is very vulnerable to being victims of human trafficking at high risk. So we've been working with that program for quite some time. We are contracted to serve a number of children and their specific referrals, and they're generally for the state of Connecticut, although we've operated outside of Connecticut as well. We also recently started with our VOCA program. And under that program, basically what we identified at CRE was, we get a lot of clients that come in through our immigration legal services, and we're like, all right, are they eligible for Project Rescue Anti-Human Trafficking? Are they eligible for survivor services or the refugee program? If they're not, there really isn't a program where there's a case manager to provide that assistance. And we noticed that that was a gap. And obviously we still provide the services, but it would have been, we were hoping for a designated case manager for those specific cases. And it was finally granted, and we have a case manager, again, a very new program. And what her focus is when there is a survivor of any other crime that doesn't fall under the specific programs, she's able to assist them, and it's very short term. So sometimes it's just requesting a report from the police department, or maybe going to the Social Security office, or something as simple as making a call to a doctor, and they may not be able to, know how to do it, or not know the process. So we have a case manager that's identified and knows who to work with, and she gets referrals. And right now we're taking referrals, obviously, from the primary offices that we work at, so the Stamford, Hartford, and Bridgeport offices. So it's a pretty neat program, again, very new, but we're really excited to have that person that can focus with those clients. And then we have our anti-human trafficking program. So we're federally funded. We've been federally funded for a number of years. When the program initially started years ago, it was because there was a case that they thought there was a victim of human trafficking, and that's where everyone kind of began organizing. I've been with the agency for over 10 years. And when I first started, there was a focus a lot on the foreign born, right? And that's what we were funded to do. And then we quickly realized, not just us, but a number of agencies that we were working with, that this wasn't just an issue that affected the foreign born. It was affecting people in our community, people in our backyard. And that's when the funding extended, and we really began to provide services to everyone. So under the current funding that we have, we are able to provide services to everyone in the state of Connecticut, and it can be anyone: men, women, adults, minors. Most of the clients that we see, just because of the nature of the work that we do at the agency, tend to be foreign born. That being said, we still get referrals for domestic survivors in the state of Connecticut. Under this current funding, the nice thing is we can provide social services, but also immigration legal services. And we find that to be extremely helpful when it comes to working with the foreign born population, specifically because they can take care of everything in basically one office, and they don't have to worry about working with different attorneys, etc. And we actually, Crystal mentioned a couple of positive cases. We actually, when I first began working at the agency, we had a case where a victim of human trafficking, and she actually just got her citizenship a few months ago. And that was really exciting to be able to see a case from the very beginning, when she's taken out of the trafficking situation to now becoming a US citizen. So we are able to provide that immigration legal services, and it's covered under the program. under the program, we're also a member of the New England Coalition Against Trafficking. And that, obviously the name says it, it's New England states, and we've come together. We're the state lead for Connecticut. And our focus very recently has been on highlighting labor trafficking and really getting people to understand what labor trafficking is and that it is happening in our community. And just bringing, putting a spotlight on it, and how can we get this information out to people that may be working on the farms, people that may be working in the homes, in the factories. So that has really been like most of the discussion that we've had during the past few months, and really identifying key sectors where we can target our training, our outreach. We also lead the Connecticut Coalition Against Trafficking. And that again, when I first started, it was like a number of people. And what we, as members, we decided it's a good idea to maybe just focus on providers and really hearing what providers have to say. Law enforcement can also attend, and just really trying to figure out what are the needs. One of the things that was talked about and has been talked about for quite some time is developing, if it's a booklet, a manual, but something that identifies all the resources that we have in Connecticut, specifically for the adults, that we can get out to everyone. So it's one of the projects that we're working on. And again, it'll probably be something very simple for the beginning phase, but something that we can get out where, Courtney spoke yesterday, where if Courtney needed information, she can pick up the booklet and say, okay, this is where I can get these type of services. And then under Project Rescue, again, a new program. It's about a year and a couple of months old. It's the Rapid Rehousing Program. And this is a collaboration with CCADV. We're actually the only non-member agency that was invited to be part of this program. And again, the first year, we're learning a lot of things. We're learning about the program, but we're very grateful for it because it has offered an opportunity for the clients that we're serving to be enrolled in this program and to work towards being in their own apartment, right? And working towards being able to pay their own rent and becoming self-sufficient. We know that that's a struggle for a lot of victims of human trafficking. So having that opportunity and that connection has been very helpful for us. And even just the training that we are allowed to be part of with that connection with CCADB has been very helpful. So we've had a successful first year, and we're definitely looking to having an even better second year. And like my colleagues have said, we offer a lot of training and outreach. A lot of the focus recently has been, at least for our agency, human trafficking and the unaccompanied children, just because we know that there is a good number here in Connecticut. We know that because of COVID and everything going on, we're losing a lot of contact with the children. They're not able to go to school the way that they would have before COVID. So these are some of the things that we're talking about, the vulnerability of children to being trafficked or, being put in high-risk situations. So it's a number of things that we do, but we work with the victims for about a year. With COVID, we have extended that a bit longer. And we really try to just cater our needs, cater to them, right? And let them decide, what goals are you trying to meet, and what can we realistically do for you in that year? And then obviously keeping in mind, if there's something that we can collaborate with the other colleagues that we have here on the call, what can we do together to better provide this service? So definitely very grateful to be able to chat about CRE and Project Rescue, and thank you for having us.
Thank you so much, Leonela. One of the things that is really clear from your presentation is the network that you described. Again, the interconnectivity between the different organizations that are working not only amongst each other, but also with law enforcement. And I really love your idea of bringing together what could be, in fact, a very modest either booklet or very modest jump page on a website, where we could connect the dots with by putting that network in a public space that is accessible to all. I would love to work with you and with our partners at the Bureau in order to develop that upon launching of this series. And maybe that is something that if you just click at the end of this broadcast, you can find it right on the same page where you found this series. So thank you so much, Vanilla. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Wendy Bowersox, Special Agent Bowersox, as I introduce you, I'd like to first turn to to Special Agent in Charge Dave Sundberg and give you the opportunity to give a little bit of context of the relationship between the work that the Bureau does and the work of the advocates on the ground, and how it is that that relationship drives your law enforcement efforts on behalf of the states. Welcome, Special Agent in Charge Dave Sundberg.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. It's a great opportunity to speak again tonight, to be part of this group. I think you hit the really critical aspect for us, and that's a partnership. The FBI and other law enforcement agencies really only play part of the role in trying to correct these issues and improve conditions for all of these people. The FBI certainly has a mandate and has authorities to take action against those who would perpetrate this type of victimization on others. We have the relationships with not only law enforcement across the United States, but also internationally and with many of our international partners. And then, of course, we are able to leverage some of our federal relationships with the State Department and others where it comes to dealing with foreign governments and trying to hit all angles of an international trafficking problem. We spoke a little bit last night about the different areas that we look at. Wendy will get more into those. In general, we look at labor trafficking, sex trafficking, and domestic servitude, and we take all of them very seriously, and we certainly see blends there. The partnerships we have across this country, and certainly here in the state of Connecticut, are some of the most powerful tools that we bring to bear. Nothing we do would be anywhere near as useful if we're done in a vacuum. We would not identify people as well. We would not identify and interdict perpetrators as well. And we would certainly, and you heard from Courtney last night, there are definitely services that we offer that I think are very powerful tools, but they're only one component. And the synergistic effect of all of us working together in government, out of government, nonprofit groups, religious-based groups, all of us in this mix together, working for the right people, working towards solutions, that is really the power that may save these lives. So with that, much appreciation for being able to participate tonight. And I would love to turn that over to Wendy for a deeper dive into what we do.
Thank you, Special Agent in Charge. And for the benefit of our viewers, this partnership between our federal partners, our local partners, and our state partners is really the substance of what we're discussing today, and how that partnership makes us all stronger and the enforcement more vibrant because of it. So thank you for mentioning that. Wendy, Special Agent Wendy Bowersox, welcome. A couple of housekeeping notes. We will be joined by Erin Williamson of Love 146 at around the top of the hour. And at that time, I will have her introduce the work that she does. But Wendy, thank you so much, firstly, for your masterful moderation of yesterday's conversation. I'm going to invite you now to give us a little bit more flavor for the role of the Bureau in working together with our advocates. But I'm also going to invite you and put you on the spot to employ some of those masterful moderation skills and just help bring out some of the dynamics and questions for our other guests. So welcome, Special Agent Bowersox.
Thank you, Stephen, so much. So we definitely could not do any of the work that we do at the FBI without all of the partners that we have, many of them that are on this call today. So our role in all of this is basically to put the bad guys in jail. It's to find those individuals who are being victimized. And ultimately, our goal is to put the people who are victimizing them in jail. We look at human trafficking in terms of sex trafficking of adults and minors, labor trafficking of adults and minors, as well as domestic servitude. I can probably say the types of cases that we work the most are probably the sex trafficking cases. Labor trafficking cases are probably some of our hardest, worst cases to work. I know that I work with Leonera a lot with these types of cases. By the very nature of the type of crime that it is, there isn't a lot of evidence that's we can find to sort of support the allegations, which, you know, sadly on our end, on law enforcement, we do need that little bit of extra evidence to prove these crimes in court. So that is a point where our partners are really necessary, because sometimes we're not always able to follow through on the legal side, but we always want to make sure that these victims are getting what they need, because it doesn't mean that they're any less victims just because we may not be able to find all the evidence that we need for our cases. These cases for us are a little bit different in the terms of the law enforcement world. Most law enforcement cases are very prosecution centered. You want to do whatever you can do to put the bad guy in jail. But with these cases, you have to be very victim centered. These are people, and a lot of times these are kids. And these are kids that at the age of 14, 15, 16 years old have seen and gone through more than most of us have gone through in our entire lives. Many of them come from extremely broken families that have been broken for many years, and they've just been victimized over and over again. So we have to work to make sure that our victims are whole before we can even really consider prosecuting these cases. And that is another instance where all of these partners are so very important to us. You know, we're the FBI, so we can only do things to a certain level. And that's where we turn to all of our partners to help us provide all of these other things that victims need, because they need so many things. And we have to try to be there and get these victims to where they're stable enough to walk through the entire legal process with their case, which can be a really difficult thing for an adult that is a victim of any crime, let alone a 14, 15-year-old child. And it definitely is not something that can be done alone. It is something that takes a whole entire village to be behind this victim, to support this victim and try and get them what they need. And it really takes a lot of time, because most of these victims are used to, like Shay talked about, being told that they're going to help and then they don't help. And so you might have to follow through with something 10, 20, 30 times to where they hardly pay attention to you before they'll actually start to pay attention to you. And I wouldn't be able to do any of the work that I do without any of these individuals. And it's funny because Leonera was talking about coming up with the pamphlet, which I think is an amazing idea. And she was talking about Courtney, because quite frankly, whenever I need a service, I look at Courtney and I'm like, hey, Courtney, we need to find this. And then she reaches out to all of these wonderful individuals and sort of finds whatever it is that we need for our victim. I have to say that in talking to some of my counterparts across the nation, here in Connecticut, we really work extremely well together. Not only do all different law enforcement agencies work well together, but all of the different NGOs and social service organizations, DCF, we just really have an amazing relationship in this state in terms of trying to combat this problem.
Thank you, Wendy. Thank you for that. And in the spirit of really digging a little deeper in those relationships and how it is that they really interact with each other, there are a couple of questions that come to mind. You know, for the benefit of our viewers, it's clear that there is what was described to me once as a faith-driven but not faith-exclusive energy around this work. And what you so masterfully described, Wendy, as that relationship between law enforcement and not just the ends of prosecution, but the process of liberation that necessarily goes hand in hand with that. So from any of our advocates, I would love to hear about that energy that we're seeing here, which is the faith-driven, but not necessarily faith-exclusive energy. And for anybody who may be watching, how is it that you organize your work in that space to bring in as many people toward liberation as you can. Maybe if we can put you on the spot, Anne Marie.
Sorry, I wasn't sure if you wanted me to share. So help me understand your question a little bit better, Steve. What are you asking?
Sure. I think, because so much of this work, so many of the advocates are in the faith-based space. The way that I've heard the space described is faith-driven, which is the principles of helping each other, of supporting each other in a way that is not only healing, but also really addresses the various needs of the individual, whether they be spiritual, physical, therapeutic, but not faith exclusive. So I know that you not only help people of faith, but you help all people. So it's really that dynamic that we'd like to dig a little deeper into.
Okay. Well, I mean, first of all, my full-time job is I'm a minister at Winterberry Church in Bloomfield, Connecticut. And our church happens to be a regional church, so we have many friends, the other churches that we care about. And years ago, when I heard about this being a problem, it was actually Leonera's circle, Connecticut Coalition Against Human Trafficking, that I was in. And they were talking about the need for a faith-based initiative and who could get the faiths together to help with this, because I think they recognized that was a piece that was missing. And so Bill Rivera at the time nominated me. And what was kind of cool about that is because of our friendships with so many churches, I started to tell them about the story of Connecticut as I understood it. And initially, what Bill Rivera would teach us is that 98% of the kids that were being trafficked in our state were coming from the Department of Children and Family. But as the good work of the Department of Children and Family occurred through the HEART grant in 2014 through 2019, what we learned actually is that the kids that are being trafficked are coming from two-parent homes to about 68%, right? So it went from only 2% coming from families to like 68% through the tracking of the data. And so that changed the narrative, and it compelled us to go out there and tell not just churches, but communities and anybody who would listen, frankly, over the past 4 years about the fact that child trafficking happens in the state of Connecticut, and then those children become young adults. And when you have a grid of brokenness, right, to the extent that you are when you've been trafficked as a child, you don't understand anything that should come normally as an understanding of what love looks like, of what normalcy looks like, of what being cared for looks like. Everything is distorted, right? And so I, again, have that mouthpiece with the churches and the mantle to tell them, hey, we know that there's a way to come into somebody's life, walk alongside of them, and just start to bless them really with hope. And that's the point of the underground. Like, we have that hope factor. We don't consider ourselves a provider like Bloom or Siri or Love 146. We are the church trying to be the church. And I believe with all my heart that if we do that right, without judgment, right? Because listen, every single person we've ever worked with has this really big story. And if you look at a person's story, you can start to help them rewrite that story. And, in a way where they take the pen and they're the author of their lives. And that's what we're trying to do. We're just trying to walk alongside of them and say, what are your goals? What do you want to do? Because the life that you were meant to have was sort of stolen. It hurt these people, and their innocence was stolen. And so our point is to come and hope with the hope factor and help them restore and rebuild. And so the churches can absolutely do that. And I'll say this too, there's so many resources in the churches, be it human resources or the fact that we pray or the fact that people they just kind of care, right? And they are used to being equipped to volunteer. There's businesses in our churches that we're talking to develop those internships, right? That we were talking about yesterday, where if there's a victim of trafficking and they have no skill sets, let's bring them into our business and work with them. And then there's people of the church that of various backgrounds. And when they hear the story and we ask them to think about how they can do something to make this changed in our state, they rise to the occasion. This morning, we sent out one of our team members to go up north to rescue 8 people who had been labor trafficked in a hotel. We were called in by one of the agencies and they said, can you help us move these people? This man that went up there is involved in aviation. Though he couldn't pull a private jet together to get these people moved from 5 states, he had to cross 5 state lines today. He himself got in a van and picked up those people and got them out of danger and brought them 5 states later where they are now safe. They just called us about an hour ago. That's the power of the church, right? Because there are just some people there that will do things that are kind of extraordinary, and they're just ordinary people, just like I am. So I hope that helps you with your question.
Thank you, Anne-Marie. That certainly does. And I wanted to bring that up because we often talk about public-private partnerships, state and federal partnerships, but I don't think we talk enough about the partnership between the public, the private, and faith-based organizations, because of that power of hope that you described. And, you know, even in the last few months, as we've been going through the pandemic and other issues, it is faith-based organizations where people have gone for that first help because there may be either a disconnect from government, local, or state, or a lack of trust. So trust, faith, hope, how all of those things work together as part of the infrastructure of healing is just such a powerful message, I think, that we heard yesterday. And I really appreciate that. You know, Crystal, one of the things that we heard in part of the presentation was how it is that all of the different wraparound services come together to help people in liberation. From your perspective, can you share a little bit more about that and how it is that the mind, body, and spirit are all need to be addressed in order to help someone heal?
Sure, and I think that really ties directly into kind of the theme that we've been speaking about in terms of not working in a vacuum and really relying on one another to get this holistic approach. You know, we have the 3 phases of case management. So the housing and the income, the spiritual, the therapeutic recovery, and then the reintegration. And though Salvation Army does a lot, we don't pretend to know or do everything. We're really grateful for the partners that we have. And so looking at the spiritual therapeutic recovery as an example, I don't have anyone on staff that does art therapy, and that's okay because we've got great resources out in the communities to work with our survivors. And to be honest with you, oftentimes these providers are willing to provide services pro bono or at a reduced rate because they believe in the healing power of what they're doing. And so I think, you know, one of the reasons why we have our case management set up the way it is in terms of addressing the housing and the income before the trauma is because, you know, you think of trafficking and you say this person has been through this horrific experience, and they have, but oftentimes they have kids at home that they need to feed or they need to feed themselves. And how can we expect them to even think about that if they're out on the streets? Or if they're struggling with substance abuse issues and they've got to go to detox and then some form of rehabilitation. And so that holistic approach is so important because it's not just the trafficking, that's not who they are, right? It's all these other components that really build the story. And so we're happy to be a part of that as often as much or as little as they would like us to. But it's absolutely crucial that all of these services come together to really help rebuild these folks.
Thank you so much for that, Crystal. I'm remembering Shay's testimony yesterday about that next step, taking that next step and being able to live up to your promises as an advocate, because that trust building is so critically important. So I love what you're describing about how we are here to take that next step with you as far as you want and need. I really appreciate that. Leonela, I am going to come back to you because I want to talk about the specific complexities around status, immigration status, perhaps, and the person who's being victimized. But before I do that, I want to welcome to our conversation tonight, Erin Williamson of Love 146. Erin, when we started our presentation, we noted that we're going to really be going through the tapestry of hope that advocates like your organization and others provide in from liberation to independence. So Erin, if you could just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about the work that Love 146 does in the state of Connecticut and nationally.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm sorry I had to join a little late. So we are Love 146. We're an international organization based here in New Haven, Connecticut. Here in Connecticut, we run a statewide program that provides services to children and youth who have been identified as really suspected or confirmed survivors of child trafficking. And we offer services across the state. We've worked with youth in every county. And we provide a wide variety of services. One of the things that we do is a rapid response, where we're oftentimes one of the first points of contact, talking to them about their exploitation. And Steve, to your point, a lot of times, and Crystal, to your point, a lot of times, youth meet us with a certain level of resistance, right? They don't necessarily want to talk with us. They don't necessarily want to engage with us. And it is kind of, it is, I think, that glimmer of hope that they can see that somebody understands what they have been through and can actually talk with them, and they don't have to necessarily explain everything to them because the person on the other end gets it. They get what trafficking actually looks like. They get what they've experienced. And I think there is a glimmer of hope that they see in that really helps the youth to engage in those rapid responses. We do about 125 a year, and about half of those kids then end up in our long-term services, which is just much more intensive. We work with youth for 3 to 4 hours every week for about a year period. And then we also just recently this year started employment and post-secondary education services. To echo Crystal's point and Anne Marie's, I think Connecticut is unique. I actually just came from, I sit on the Department of Health and Human Services National Human Trafficking Advisory Committee on the sex trafficking of children and youth. And I can tell you that what is happening in Connecticut in terms of the collaboration, especially in terms of addressing the issue at a child level, it doesn't happen in a lot of states where we have amazing partnerships, we have amazing relationships. There is not a territorial thing that you see in some other states around this or similar issues. Certainly, I think everyone here can recognize that there's work still to be done, and we want to see progress. But I think one of the things that I find most hopeful about Connecticut is that many of us have just deep trust for each other and deep trust that the other person is committed to this topic and committed to addressing child trafficking in our state. So thank you so much, Steve, for inviting me.
Thank you so much, Erin. And that modeling of that deep trust among the advocates is something that I think really draws people who are in need of help to the work that you're doing. So thank you for highlighting that. Wendy, Wendy Bauer, Special Agent Bowersox, I want to turn back to you because I bet that there are viewers who are watching, everyday people who want to do a little something to help. And we know that there is something at the FBI, which is the FBI Citizens Academy. Wendy, can you tell us a little bit about that and perhaps take the opportunity to introduce Dr. Louis Oreo in the process?
So I can definitely talk a little bit about Citizens Academy, though Charlie might be better to talk about it than I am because he sort of runs the Citizens Academy. But what I can say first is that as far as trafficking goes, and I'll sort of let Charlie describe a little bit more about what the Citizens Academy is, but Citizens Academy alumni have been amazing for us in terms of partnership with trying to work to combat some of these issues that we are finding with trafficking and some of the pitfalls that we see on the FBI end in helping these kids. And they also, I think Anne-Marie mentioned them yesterday, the backpacks for the youth. They have just average citizens out in the community have put together backpacks that when we rescue or find these kids at 2 a.m. in a hotel, and they have literally the clothes on their back, which usually are not very much. These backpacks have clothing, they have toiletries. It's amazing what a chapstick, a little tube of chapstick means to these kids when you find them, and they will hold on to it and they will keep it. So we definitely have a great relationship with our Citizens Academy alumni. They help us a lot in this world. And maybe I'll turn it over to Charlie to sort of describe about it a little more.
Thank you, Wendy. Hi, Charlie. You're not off the hook. Welcome, Charlie.
Getting away with something there, Steve. So to your point and to Wendy's point, we're pretty unique in the sense that our New Haven Field Division Citizens Academy has gone a little past the norm. The Citizens Academy is a national program that happens in divisions throughout the country. And what it is, it's an opportunity for people to come into the FBI, get a sneak peek at what the FBI represents, our mission, how we go about achieving our mission, working in partnership with law enforcement, community members, and the like. What we've done in Connecticut is we've taken it to a place where I wanted to make our Citizens Academy here in Connecticut a force multiplier with regard to several issues that occur in our communities across the state. And one was the biggest problem, human trafficking, and the second was guns in our communities. And what we've done is we created a program to bring awareness to variations in diverse communities throughout the state. And we brought in Citizens Academy alumni graduate members and taught them the FBI presentation on human trafficking awareness. And you'd be amazed at just how many avenues and forums that the Citizens Academy alumni can get into that the FBI itself aren't invited into. So there are organizations out there, and again, you don't know what you don't know, but members of the Citizens Academy alumni come from various different walks and backgrounds, professions, and areas of the state, inner city, urban as well. So we rely on them after having learned the presentations that the FBI has put together and gotten approved from headquarters, to then have those individuals from the Citizens Academy go out into the communities and be a force multiplier at raising awareness about what human trafficking looks like, where it occurs, how it occurs. And we've had great success with that, which is one of the reasons why we've had such a great relationship with all of the nonprofits here gathered on this call. I think this is a perfect segue for me to introduce you to Dr. Louis Oreo, who is a Citizens Academy alumni and who has in fact mastered the program and has not only taken the program and worked in conjunction and collaboration with the Underground, Love 146, and multitude of other organizations involved in human trafficking, but now he's relocated to Dallas, Texas, and he's taken Connecticut's model and bringing it to Dallas, and in part what we've done here, and hopefully it'll spread throughout the country. So I'd like to just introduce you to Dr. Louis Oreo, just to give a few minutes of what he's done and what his observations are about the progression of awareness in this state and beyond.
Welcome, Dr. Oreo.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Steve, and thank you, Charlie. So I guess I should probably start by sharing with you a little bit of my background. I'm a retired orthopedic surgeon. After about 4 decades in medicine, I retired in 2015, and I founded a company that exists today to support various different charities. I was introduced to the Citizens Academy, and I'm a graduate of 2013. And thinking back to those days, I was struck by what a privilege and honor it was to be able to participate in that academy because it really gave me a sense that I could never otherwise have had of the dedication and the difficulty of the work that people like Charlie and Wendy and Courtney at the FBI do each and every day. And so for me, it was all about the adage of to whom much is given, much is required. And in thinking about the opportunity to participate in that program and spend time with these dedicated FBI staff members who were basically working with us after, in addition to their normal workload, it left us, or it left me in particular, with a sense of responsibility and feeling that I wanted to do everything I could to leverage the respect in the community that I held as a physician and my existing relationships to help build that bridge of trust and respect between the communities that the FBI serves, so that the people in those communities understood better the dedicated work that they do every day and were able to approach their own responsibilities in working with the Bureau with the sense of respect and trust that the Bureau deserves. As Charlie mentioned early on, we started with a presentation that was called Social Media in Our Global Neighborhood. And that was a presentation developed by the FBI, and I would go out into various different communities, sometimes speaking to hundreds of people at a time, sometimes to smaller groups. But the point was, we took this valuable information that was developed by the FBI, and we used that to educate communities how to protect themselves and their children. And it was an extremely emotional experience for me, because some of the communities and venues in which I would speak were certainly obviously very challenged areas. And it was just a privilege to spend time with these people and to be able to bring some sense of hope and comfort and an understanding of the dedicated work that the FBI is doing in supporting those communities, so that they felt empowered to create partnerships that would help them work with the Bureau in protecting their communities. What's gone on over the years is that I came to be introduced to the human trafficking initiatives. And quite honestly, you may be able to tell I'm an older guy, and I had no idea of the scope and severity of the problem. And it was very shocking. And at first, when I was exposed to it, I kind of felt overwhelmed. And I said, you know, what could one person possibly do? And in working with the Underground and Anne-Marie Boulay and the partnerships that we've been able to create, fortunately, we were able to develop an effort that ultimately wound up reaching and bringing awareness to millions, literally millions of citizens across the state of Connecticut. So when COVID hit us, I kind of, it was at a time when I relocated to the Dallas area, and I realized that even though this pandemic was a terribly horrible thing, there may be a way to take some of what we've learned and the strategies that we've had to employ to navigate through this time of isolation and bring it to this work that we're doing in building awareness. So what I did down here in the Dallas area was approach various different communities and religious groups and began to scale our effort into a virtual network, where now the Underground and myself and our other partners present awareness presentations all across the country. We did one several weeks ago that actually reached the entire Dallas diocese, and the safe environment directors throughout the Diocese of Dallas brought all of their directors into this meeting to learn about what we're doing, so that we can start to offer individual presentations to all the different communities. So we've developed a way to scale the awareness effort, and now we're the entity that I created is now in the process of working with the underground in programs for universities where we're actually developing syllabuses so that they can instruct freshman students on how to protect themselves. And we've experienced a great deal of success in university communities as well, building awareness. So I think that the point that I would make here is that even someone like myself with no specific background and training, if you have a desire to contribute, there's a way for all of us to help in this critical effort to protect our children and our communities. And I'm very grateful for the training I've received through the Citizens Academy and for the partnership that I've been able to enjoy with the underground and all the team members that Anne-Marie brings to the effort. And we've even created a new entity called PATH that we're expanding, which stands for Partnership Against Trafficking of Humans. And we're beginning to scale that effort as well by bringing businesses and business owners into the fight. So we're grateful for where we are, but we're very hopeful about where we have yet to go. Thank you.
Steve, I just really wanted to put the icing on that cake. That's just an example of one individual from Citizens Academy alumni and the effect and the ripple effect that we have. It's crucial for everyone on this call, any of our viewers, to understand that one of the biggest problems we face with human trafficking is the mere detection of human trafficking. And so when you become more aware of what human trafficking actually looks like, you are more effective in having to combat it within your communities. And I think that's one of the big issues that I'm glad that we're addressing here tonight. Wendy Bowersox talks about it, but I think that's something that really needs to be highlighted. The idea that, and I've said it yesterday right after Shay was speaking, that human trafficking takes many forms, and we need to really educate our communities, our church communities, even our law enforcement communities at times need to be updated and educated on some of the new trends and things that are happening. And so we have to find as many ways as possible to make that happen.
Thank you so much, Charlie. And for someone who may be watching who would like to become involved with the Citizens Academy, is there a way that just a regular citizen who may be interested in contributing some way can learn more about the Citizens Academy?
So typically, prior to COVID, we would put out the applications around January, February. Not sure if we're going to be able to do a standard Citizens Academy class this year. All of that is still in limbo, but it will always be posted on our website, the FBI New Haven website. It's I think it's www.fbinewhaven.gov, and all the information will be found there. You click on Community Outreach, and you'll see all the information about the application when it comes live. And we encourage those that are actively involved in community leaders, reverends, business owners, different nonprofit organizers. We encourage those individuals to come and get involved because they are an actual representation of the community that we serve. And we look to them to be an extension of our message and our mission. So the information will be on the website. I don't know for sure where we stand now with the pandemic on whether or not we're going to have in-person classes, but at some point we may have a variation of it. But it is a really transformative program that we put together here in New Haven. And I will brag a little bit. Here in Connecticut, we've received national awards for our program, what we've developed and how we've executed our program 3 years in a row, the highest level across the nation for FBI acknowledgement in programming.
Thank you, Charlie. Thank you so much for that, by the way. One of the things that we learned yesterday was how this crisis, the COVID crisis, is impacting every aspect of our lives, including the ability for people to find resources. So I love that we are learning as we go and growing as we go, because that is critically important to continue to provide these services, especially during these trying times. So thank you, Charlie, for all the work that you've been doing there. It is such a vital service to be able to continue to build that network of people working against human trafficking. Leonela, one of the things that struck me in your presentation was just the complexities of status as you try to help people who have been victimized achieve liberation, and also, by the way, achieve some level of permanency if that's what they desire. So can you tell us a little bit more about those complexities, Leonela, in the work that you do?
Yeah, of course. So, I think along with obviously coming from situations where they're victimized, like all victims of human trafficking, they have that additional things that they have to worry about. And that really plays down to the legal status and that uncertainty of, are we going to be able to get status? How long is it going to take? Can I work here legally? And what we notice is, a lot of our cases are coming from Central America, and there's often this distrust with policemen, people of certain status. I think what has been great and essential, and it's needed across the board, is having those partners that you can rely on when it comes to interviewing and working with these victims. I think once we've established those relationships, and we know, for example, when working with Wendy, we know that Wendy will work with the victim and she will be somebody that's approachable, that won't, be scary for the client to meet with. And also, having that patience to be able to not just meet once, but maybe multiple times, because that often is needed. I think what we're seeing a lot now is not just that fear of legal status, the delay in getting immigration paperwork processed, but it's also there's that additional thing with COVID, and a lot of the clients that we have that haven't achieved that status have lost their jobs. So now it's now we're worried about things where maybe before we weren't as worried: food, paying that rent. So there's additional things that we're working on, and I think it's just working with them and letting them know, we're trying the best that we can. This is what the timeline may look like, and trying to provide that support. And as I mentioned earlier, we generally work with them for a year, but with COVID and everything going on, even the processing of a T visa, we've had to extend cases to work with them for a lot longer. But that fear is definitely there. It's something we're working with a couple of clients that literally call us every day, and they're worried, can you apply for this? Am I safe doing this? And they are very valid questions. Unfortunately, sometimes we don't have the exact answer. So we just try to, work with them and try to get the resources that are available and try to make them feel as safe as possible. Obviously, explaining everything as well, ensuring that they know what the immigration process will look like, what their rights are, what things can work, what things might not work. And, recently with the T visas, there's been a lot more requests in terms of is it a valid trafficking case? So, those are things that we have to explain to them, and they have to understand that this may delay the process, and it doesn't mean, that they're going to deny it or that they're going to approve it. But these are really scary things, and in their position, they're coming from a situation where they've been victimized, and maybe they've been removed from that situation, but now there's other things that they have to worry about. So definitely very complex, but I think what's been helpful, at least for our program, is we work, we have a very small team. So we work with Alicia and Caroline, and those are our attorneys in the program. So most of our clients know, if Alicia isn't available, we have Caroline and myself to assist in the cases. So I think that that's been very helpful, where they know if they show up at 670 Clinton, they're going to find one of us. So that's been very helpful in building the trust with the immigrant community.
Thank you, Leonela. Yesterday, we were joined by State Representative Robin Porter, who happens to be the chair, one of the chairs of the Labor Committee for the state of Connecticut's General Assembly. And I know that she would want me to ask and really tease out one thing that you noted, which is the dynamic of labor trafficking and labor exploitation, especially among the immigrant community. Can you tell us a little bit more about your work there? I know that Special Agent Bowersox noted that that is probably some of the most complex work.
It is difficult. And I think, the reason I would say that we see most of these cases, it's because we have an immigration program. And generally people come in saying, how can I get status? How can you help me out? And generally from there is where we get the referrals. Our attorneys and accredited reps will screen them. And if there is some red flag or some concern, we'll have them screened right away. So generally that's how we get our referrals. But what we have noticed too is like with our unaccompanied children, a lot of these children are turning 18. So they end up, they're reunited with a sponsor, whoever that may be. And then once they turn 18, they're kind of left to fend for themselves. And we've seen situations that have where they've been trafficked in home country, they've been trafficked en route to the US, and then they're trafficked once they're in the state of Connecticut. So definitely very complex. It's definitely taken a lot of work to gain the trust of some of these victims. And, it's really just having the patience to work with them, really try to understand the cases and have them be, I think what's important with all of this is having them be a part of the process, that they understand what's happening from beginning to end, where there's no surprises, and they're involved with the social services with their goals, that we're not setting those goals for them, that they set the goals and that it's something that's attainable and not making these false promises. So I would say with with the immigrant community, the labor trafficking cases that we see a lot have been in the homes, the different farms, hotel industries, restaurant industries. So definitely, doing a lot of outreach and getting out there, and just letting people know what labor trafficking looks like, that it could be a really bad working situation, but generally, if it's a really bad working situation, there's questions that need to be asked because it could potentially be trafficking. So, recently we've been communicating with the different communities and talking about specifically those children that are turning 18, just because a lot of them, there have been cases throughout the US where they are exploited. They prey upon them because a lot of them don't have status, don't really have anyone to defend them, to really look out for them, and they are put in pretty horrible situations. So definitely working on getting more people to know about labor trafficking and asking those tough questions that need to be asked.
Thank you, Leonela. And I know that one of the things that we noted early on in the pandemic was that people that had that were either undocumented or had a questionable status within the family often did not want to reach out for help.
Right.
So what I worry about here is whether you have faced that complexity, firstly, and how is it that you address that? And is there a possibility of achieving an adjustment of status for someone who's been victimized?
So, in terms of like the assistance, that's something that we're continuing to face even now. We have a program that's there to provide, a small amount of money, rental assistance, and it's primarily for the undocumented community. We didn't think we'd face such a struggle in getting people to sign up for the program. And, we're trying to keep it as little information as possible, but obviously we have to ask for certain information. And what we've noticed has been helpful is really working with all the agencies around the state of Connecticut, agencies that immigrant communities will go to and that they know that it's an agency that they can work with, that they can trust. And through those partnerships, we have been able to get more people to apply for the program. But I think it's definitely something that, it was an issue, I think, at the beginning of the pandemic. And I think we got to a point where maybe we were working through it and people were getting assistance. Now we're getting back, where numbers are going up again. That's one of the biggest concerns that we are trying to find a solution. I don't know if we will, but it's how do we help them out with like this second phase where we've pretty much depleted all the resources with that first one. So how do we help them out with the second phase where the needs may be even higher than they were the first time? So that's like one of the things that we're trying to work out. But I think definitely working with those agencies that work, for example, with the DACA students, with the Know Your Rights groups, they have been essential when it comes to providing that assistance to the immigrant community. And then in terms of immigration relief, it really like depends. with the victim of human trafficking, we apply for that T visa. And if there's any other form of relief that can be done in conjunction, then we try. I'm not an attorney, so I'm speaking based on what I've observed and learned through the years. But I will say there are other forms of immigration relief. And that's why I think it's so essential that even if there is, this is what I say in the community, even if there is like just a question, let's have that person screened, because even if they're not eligible, for example, for a T visa, they may be eligible for some other form of relief. I think a lot about, I bring them up, but the unaccompanied children, maybe they're not eligible for a T visa, but maybe they are eligible for the special immigrant juvenile status. That may be a form that we can apply. And the immigration system is so complex, and it's constantly updating. So, one of the things that I always say is rely on those experts, those immigration attorneys that have been working with the cases, that have been working with the clients hand in hand, and then let them decide, is this person eligible for a T visa or some other form of relief? And then we can begin the social services in conjunction with the immigration services.
Thank you so much, Leonera, for that very thoughtful dissertation on the issue, on this particular issue, and also on the labor complexities as well. I know that Representative Porter would want me to repeat and reiterate her commitment to working through her jurisdiction to really focus on the labor issues and the labor complexities. So thank you. I love that this is such a great partnership of public health, labor, and really the criminal justice system, and how all of these things work together to help the advocates help survivors into liberation. So thank you so much, Leonela, for that. Wendy, I'd like to come to a close where we began, because I really would like to focus for our viewers, on the substance of why we're here. Part of what we learned, and what we've learned through your work and through the work of the Bureau and our advocates, is that it's important to see, when you see something, say something, but also to recognize what the signs of abuse, exploitation, and trafficking might be. So Wendy, if you could come back just for a little bit and just help us really recap how it is that what we can do as parents, as community members, to identify and to really begin the process of helping people who are being victimized.
Of course. So what I can say is, for those individuals who are parents out there, is pay attention to what your children are doing. Pay attention to who they are talking to online. That is very, very important. These traffickers are very skillful at what they do. And sadly, kids are skillful at what they do. And one thing that kids do is they put out their every woe and their every emotion out there online for everybody to read. And so these traffickers look for those kids who are angry at their fathers, or who hate their parents, or who just don't want to be here anymore. And they reach out to them, and they immediately start to groom them and get them to where they can manipulate them. So it's really very important to pay attention to who they're talking to, where they're going. We always talk about sort of keeping an eye out for kids that have things that maybe they shouldn't. They have new clothes, hotel key cards maybe start showing up in their homes, different cell phones that they're not sure where they're getting their cell phones. It's sort of keeping an eye out for all of those things. And then as community members, I think a really big part of it is just educating yourself. Obviously, if somebody sees something, we don't want them to approach anybody. We would never want anybody to put themselves in any sort of dangerous situation, but pay attention to what's going on. And it absolutely is important to say something if you think you see something. It is not the average citizen's job to figure out if there's something wrong going on in a situation. It is law enforcement's job to figure out if something wrong is going on in a situation. So if an individual at a hotel sees something that looks a little strange, they should call the police. There is the Polaris Project, that is the National Human Trafficking Hotline. They can reach out to the Polaris Project. They can even make a referral that is anonymous if they don't want to leave their name. And all of those referrals, at least for the state of Connecticut, come to myself, prosecutors that look at these cases, and other law enforcement individuals as well. And then it's our job to go out and see if we can figure out what is going on. And as talked about yesterday with Charlie and Courtney and Shay, it's very important to realize that this doesn't look like what it looks like in the movies. These kids are not screaming for help. I would argue that if anybody stays in a hotel on any type of regular basis throughout a year, they probably have walked past a trafficking victim and just have absolutely no idea, because they look like everybody else. So just pay attention. If you see something that looks a little odd, say something and let the rest of us sort of go to work.
Thank you so much, Wendy, for that recap. You know, what's really remarkable is that any one of us can be part of the network of helping address the issue of trafficking wherever we may be, if we know where the resources are and if we know where to turn. So I really appreciate you bringing that to bear. As we said before, in the release of this series, we will be including on the very page where you found this series, some of those resources, so that at the very least, you know where to start to look. So thank you again. As we come to a close, I am going to turn to State Representative Jillian Gilchrist. As we stated before, Representative Gilchrist will be reprising her role as the chair of the Trafficking in Persons Council, and we are so honored to have her do that. Your storied support and leadership in these areas has been so critical for the network of support that is built in Connecticut. And I bet it is part of the reason that there is such great trust and organization in the state. So Representative Gilchrist, I'd like to welcome you again for some parting words.
Thank you, Steve, and thank you, everyone. It's so nice to see and hear from all of you tonight. The key takeaway for me is partnerships, and I feel like everyone discussed partnership, and we are just so fortunate in the state of Connecticut to have so many committed and passionate advocates who deeply care about this work, and that's what you heard tonight. It's an issue that once you learn about it, you can never forget. And everyone doing this work in the state of Connecticut is driven by that passion and that commitment to just make people's lives better. And it's weird to say excited about a topic like this, but I'm excited to be having the opportunity to get into this role again, because I love these people and I love getting to learn from them and work with them and help them to strengthen the work that they do. I feel truly honored to work with them. You know, some people will say, how do you do politics? And I'll say, I get to work on the policy. You know, it's these folks who are just doing the hard work day in and day out. So thank you, Steve, for trusting in me. And I look forward to working with you all again. And again, thank you for the work you do on behalf of the people of Connecticut.
Thank you so much, Representative Gilchrist. And to our co-hosts tonight, Special Agent in Charge, Dave Sundberg, and your team, Charlie and Wendy, thank you so much for this conversation in the past couple of days. I want to thank you for the work that you continue to do in enforcing the laws with dignity and with grace in this very difficult space. For our providers, our first providers, and our advocates, thank you so much for all of the information that you've been able to share. As I said yesterday, this truly is life-saving work. And I know that somewhere a viewer of either the first part or the second part of this series will hear your words and feel comfort that somewhere there is someone who can help them take that next step toward liberation and freedom. So on behalf of the people of the state of Connecticut and the Commission, I want to thank all of you for the work that you do. And please look to the page where you found this series for further information on all of these wonderful actors in this field, and for information on how you can say something if you see something. Thank you very much and have a good evening.